Why can you focus so deeply on one thing that everything else disappears, but the moment there's noise, it feels like your brain just stops working? You can sit there completely locked in, following something step by step, holding it all together clearly. It almost feels effortless, like your attention is being pulled forward in a straight line. But then a bit of background noise comes in, people talking, a TV, even a constant hum, and suddenly that line breaks. You lose your place, your thinking fragments, and it feels like you can't hold on to anything properly. It's not that you've lost your ability to think, you've already proven you can. The confusing part is how quickly it changes, as if your mind can switch from sharp and controlled to scattered and overloaded just because the environment shifted. In a quiet environment, you can follow a clear line of thought from beginning to end. In a noisy one, that line keeps getting interrupted. You lose where you were, you have to restart, and after a while it starts to feel frustrating or even exhausting. It's not just that the noise is distracting, it actually feels like your ability to think properly is being disrupted. That's why this feels so confusing. You know what you're capable of because you've experienced it when things are calm. But you also know how quickly that ability seems to disappear when the environment changes, and it's hard to explain why that happens. When everything is quiet and nothing is pulling at your attention, your system naturally narrows its focus. It locks onto one thing and starts filtering everything else out. That's why you can go deep. You're not trying to manage multiple inputs at once. Your mind is able to hold a clear path and follow it without interruption. That ability isn't something that comes and goes randomly. It's how your system is designed to work when it's stable. It prioritizes depth over spread, locking onto a single stream of information and staying there long enough to process it properly. That's what allows you to think clearly, solve problems, and stay engaged for long periods without effort. So the ability to focus deeply isn't the strange part here. It's actually the default mode when nothing is interfering with the system. But your system doesn't stay in that state all the time. It shifts depending on what's happening underneath, and the main thing that drives that shift is emotional triggers. When there are unresolved triggers sitting in the background, your system starts to become more alert without you consciously choosing it. It moves into a more watchful state, where instead of narrowing down onto one thing, it begins scanning for potential problems. That shift is automatic. It's not something you decide to do. It's the system trying to protect you based on past experience. As that state kicks in, your sensitivity increases. You start picking up more from the environment, even small changes or background signals that would normally be filtered out. The same system that can lock in deeply when it's calm now starts widening its attention because it's no longer focused on depth. It's focused on monitoring what's around you. Once that shift happens, noise is no longer just background sound. It becomes part of what the system is trying to process. Instead of filtering it out, your attention starts getting pulled toward it. Multiple inputs begin competing at the same time, and your system is trying to keep track of all of them. That's where the breakdown starts. It's not that your ability to think has disappeared. It's that the system is no longer holding a single clear line. It's trying to manage too much at once. On top of that, there are two layers to how that noise is experienced. The first is physical. When your system is in this more alert state, your sensitivity increases, so sounds feel sharper, more intrusive, and harder to ignore. The second layer is emotional. If certain sounds are linked to past experiences, they can trigger a response that adds another level of intensity on top of the physical discomfort. So what you end up with is not just distraction, but a combination of increased input, reduced filtering, and in some cases, emotional activation. That's why it can feel like your thinking is shutting down, even though the underlying ability is still there. So when you put both sides together, the paradox starts to collapse. The same system that allows you to focus deeply is the one that struggles in noise. When it's stable, it narrows down, filters out distractions, and follows a single line of thought. When emotional triggers are active, it shifts into a more alert state, widens its attention, and starts taking in far more than it can process clearly at once. That's why it can feel like two completely different versions of you. In one state, everything is clear and controlled. In the other, everything feels scattered and hard to manage. But it's not two different abilities. It's the same system operating in two different states, and the difference between those states is being driven by emotional triggers. Once you see it this way, the next step feels obvious. If emotional triggers are what's shifting the system, then the logical move is to try and understand them. You start paying attention to when the shift happens, what sets it off, and how it plays out. You look for patterns, you analyze different situations, and you begin building a clearer picture of what's going on underneath. That approach makes sense, especially if you naturally think in systems. When something behaves in a consistent way, your instinct is to map it out and figure it out. You're looking for the missing piece that explains it fully, because once you have that, it feels like you should be able to control it. But this is where another paradox shows up. You can understand what's happening. You can see the shift in real time, recognize when your system is moving out of that focused state, and even predict how it's going to affect you. And yet, when you're back in that same environment, the reaction still happens. The noise still pulls your attention apart. Your thinking still becomes fragmented. The same pattern plays out again, even though you know exactly what it is and why it's happening. So if understanding the mechanism doesn't stop the reaction, then what actually changes it? If understanding it isn't enough, then you're missing a step somewhere, and this is the part most people don't see, because everything up to this point makes it feel like you're close. You can explain it, you can recognize it, and it feels like you're one piece away from being able to control it. But that last piece isn't more understanding. There's a link to a short video in the description below that breaks down what that missing step is and why understanding on its own doesn't change the reaction. Before you go, I'd be interested to know how this shows up for you. Are you able to stay focused in some noisy environments, or does it break your thinking straight away? Put your thoughts in the comments below. And if you are so inclined, here's another paradox up here for you to explore next.